Plato versus Aristotle. Diptych by Shreya. My goals for this project were to artistically explain the differences between Aristotle and Platonic schools of thought with regard to the perceptions and purposes of art. The requirement of the diptych lent itself to my vision of the project, as I decided to have two different panels to portray the 2 points of view. This usage of text helped me to elaborate upon what it was I wanted to get across. I used quotes and concepts from the methodologies of art to put my point across, and weaved in the artistic and visual elements such as shape, color, design, to assist in my portrayal of my idea. First, I dealt with shape. I created 2 archways to show the school of thought, as each view on art is an amalgamation of bits and pieces that fall under one hood of an idea. Similarly, an archway is like a structural guideline to one's pathway of thought. It is not restricted to one stone or sheet or panel, but a prescribed entry to one type of underlying concept. It is also encouraging to the viewer to take in the artwork with a personal interpretation, as archways present a further path beyond its stones. Next, I approached color and medium. This was an important aspect of the piece for me, because I find that a viewer's interpretation and understanding of many times stems from the medium or the color choice. I chose similar colors for both pieces to restate that though they had vastly different opinions, there were some similarities in their beliefs, such as the stonework essence, as the archway with rough texture is also an attempt to adhere to the Platonic school of thought. The rough and realistic texturing of the stone and lack of perspective were to restate that feel. The manipulations of color and medium were my attempt to show Plato's very strict and almost negative views of art. I also used as neutral and limited colors as possible to prevent any perception of emotion or personal interpretation of the piece. This was important because Plato did not believe in art as a personal expression or interpretation, but merely a copy. However, on the Aristotle archway, there is no clear outlining of an arch. There is simply a shape to show that it is an arch, but may be interpreted otherwise, within the mere guideline that it be an arch. The Aristotle arch is soft in tone and texture, and all the layering is only in the text and color, not in an abrasive rough glue or paint. The colors I used all complemented each other. However, they were still bright and individual in their own way. In the same sense, Aristotle believed that art has a sense of beauty and individual perception or idealization of something in nature, and that was okay in art. That is what the colors and the medium reflect, individuality within a certain realm. The color and medium serve to enhance the design, in which the large part of the textual aspect of the project lies. The text was primarily to present the ideas in a dramatic and clear form, and to adhere to the diptych format. It provides a viewer with some starting point to understand the piece. On the Plato archway, there is a repeated text with wording such as "art is merely imitation" and "a copy of what is." The text is arranged in a very simple and true outlining of a Plato-looking face to represent, once again, the idea that art is not beauty, but merely an imitation of what is real. It is repeated so many times in exact lines just to evoke the feeling of overwhelming structure and similarity, and also to give the idea that it is merely a copy of faces or repetition of text. However, the Aristotle archway is more dramatic and beautiful, stylistically in terms of the way the text is written. It still holds some repetition and structure, as Aristotle did believe in the repetition of what is an underlying importance and structure as a necessary element of art. However, he did not strictly follow those rules and believed art to be a beautiful expression, as mentioned before. That is why there are also eyes around the archway, to show his beliefs in idealization and personal interpretation of nature. The phrases matter, maker, and purpose are what is repeated in the structured piece of the arch to reflect the similarities with Plato, but still the differences also, with the eyes complementing the piece from the outside. That is also why there are 3 colors and pieces, to reflect the 3 important rules of thumb that Aristotle believed were defining elements of art: matter, maker, and purpose. The word beauty is also in the piece to show that beauty also defines art and is the eyelashes of the eye, to show how in one's personal characterization of nature, beauty finds its place and is woven into artwork. There are many parts of the 2 arches that collectively represent the comparison of Plato and Aristotle, all expressed through shape, color, medium, and design. These elements are the main ways that I try to express the similarities and differences between the two schools of thought, and I feel that I have sufficiently achieved my goal in presenting these ideas.